Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the United States Israel Morocco Business Council first event. This is our inaugural event on energy and security. We will be discussing the energy crisis in Europe and the energy issues in the Eastern Mediterranean with an exciting panel of distinguished experts who will provide their insights in their country's contribution to resolving energy-related issues, potential cooperation with Europe and with each other, and we will engage in a discussion concerning the problem solving and potential for future breakthroughs. Before I introduce our panelists today, we will hear welcoming remarks by Malcolm Conline, who is the vice chair of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. He's been deeply involved with both energy issues as such and the countries represented here today: Israel, Azerbaijan, Morocco, and Egypt, and of course with Europe and many others. And we'll hear from him right away. Afterwards, I'll introduce the speakers. They'll each get a few minutes to discuss um, their positions, following which we'll have a moderated discussion. If you would like to submit any questions, please direct message them to me on my Twitter account, or you can send them um, uh, through Facebook as well. Thank you.
I want to thank the U.S. Israel Morocco Business Council, notably its president, Anis El Okmani, and Vice President Irina Zuckerman, for bringing together these very distinguished speakers from the U.S., from Israel, Morocco, Egypt, and Azerbaijan. We are indebted to all of you for this. Energy diversification and sufficiency are key to security, stability, and peace. As Europe becomes more energy dependent, including with the decommissioning of Germany's nuclear plants, Russia has increasingly leveraged its fuel supplies to Europe and is now pressing Eastern Europe to the potential brink of conflict. Meanwhile, Algeria's closure of the Maghreb-Europe gas pipeline that runs through Morocco to Spain is a politically motivated act. This winter, we see European energy supplies endangered, prices skyrocketing, and desperation leading to record high coal consumption despite the environmental consequences. Israel, Azerbaijan, Morocco, and Egypt can be essential allies in addressing this crisis, providing energy solutions, countering exploitation by extremist elements, promoting cooperation while addressing climate concerns. Morocco, under the enlightened leadership of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, is well positioned to play a leadership role in the Eastern Mediterranean and far beyond. Morocco has much to offer the entire region as it develops its great economic potential. Its strategic geopolitical location makes it a vital hub in linking the West to the East, to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Already home to the world's largest concentrated solar power plant, U.S. recognition of Morocco's sovereignty in the Sahara is paving the way for new solar and other energy projects. Azerbaijan also occupies a critical geopolitical location and is a vital link in multiple areas, including the Black Sea, the Caucasus, Central Asia. At the same time, it lives in a dangerous neighborhood. But President Ilham Aliyev has deftly managed both to reunite his country and, through the South Gas Corridor, to bypass any stranglehold on southeastern European energy supplies. In the South Caucasus and the EU, Azerbaijan is also spearheading many renewable energy projects. Egypt's extensive infrastructure and President Sisi's leadership, convening the Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum in particular, promised to make the country an energy hub, supplying Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Its multiple domestic capacities and ties to regional energy sources make Egypt a vital factor and important partner. While the lack of funding and the U.S. withdrawal of support spells probably the end of the proposed East Med pipeline that would have supplied Israeli liquefied natural gas to Europe via Cyprus and Greece, the EU is, however, moving ahead with the Eurasian Interconnector, connecting Greece and Cyprus with Israel's energy grid to the benefit of all concerned. We will likely see Israeli LNG also reaching Europe via Egypt in the interim. This important symposium promises to be the first in a series of events designed to translate the new era of diplomatic openness and opportunity with Israel into tangible, mutually beneficial results for all, including cultural exchanges, counterterrorism efforts, security cooperation, as well as high-tech and business development. I am honored to be a part of this effort and look forward to leading the UIMBC's Energy Summit delegation to Morocco later this year. Thank you all for being part of it.
This was Malcolm Hoenlein, whose leadership on these issues has proven to be a major boon to international diplomacy. And now, for the first guest to discuss the practical issues in energy and energy security is Dalia Ziada. She is the executive director of the Center for Middle East and Eastern Mediterranean Studies in Egypt. Dalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Irina, and thank you for the US Israel Morocco Forum. And actually, it's a great effort you're doing to educate the people all over the world about this critical issue of or the rising power of the Eastern Mediterranean that is finally trying to find a way to cooperate rather than conflict after actually years and decades of conflicts. Of course, in energy and specifically the natural gas is in the heart of all the conflicts and also all the efforts to bring together the people of the Eastern Mediterranean region and the governments of the Eastern Mediterranean region. As we have recently seen, the United States administration of President Biden made a decision to withdraw from supporting, it's not announced publicly yet, but as actually circulated in media and in private circles of concern, have already decided to withdraw its support to the East Med pipeline, which which actually puts us in front of a new reality about what should happen next in the region. But while this is happening, we have also a rising power or a rising cooperation, a very positive cooperation between Egypt and Israel that may be forming a new hub that will solve this problem of maybe the potential failure of the East Med pipeline project. In the past 2 years in particular, we have seen unprecedented cooperation between Egypt and Israel in terms with liquefying the gas and selling it to Europe, which actually participated greatly in solving a lot of the shortage or compensating for the shortage that has been happening in Europe in the past, let's say, 5 to 6 years in terms with liquefied natural gas and the use of natural gas. In February 21, the Egyptian Minister of Petroleum traveled to Israel and made a deal with the Israeli officials that they export to us, to Egypt, their natural gas, surplus of natural gas, and then they can use to liquefy in the main plants, in the Egyptian plants, gas liquefaction plants in the Mediterranean, specifically Etco and Damietta, which has been actually not working since they were established between 2003 and 2005. And once this cooperation is started, now we are seeing the statistics actually are improving greatly regarding the exportation of or Egypt's ability to export liquefied natural gas to Europe, and not only to Europe, but also to places as far as Asia, in Pakistan, India. For example, some of the numbers coming from a recent report by the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, they say that in the second quarter of 2021, Egypt exported 1.4 million tons of liquefied natural gas from its plants in the Eastern Mediterranean. This number, compared to the same period in 2020, which is second quarter in 2020, Egypt exportation of liquefied natural gas was 0.1 million. So you can see the difference when Israel and Egypt decided to cooperate in this regard. I think this needs to be intensified if we want to see a solution for the problem, because actually the exportation of liquefied natural gas logistically is much easier than building pipelines, which are usually costly. Liquefied natural gas is transported by cargoes or gas tankers through the sea. Also, another interesting static that will take us to the next point, that we need to solve this problem of energy shortage in the region in general, especially in Southern Europe, is the fact that Egypt in the last quarter of 2021, in the fourth quarter of 2021, exported 7 cargoes of liquefied natural gas to Turkey, which brings us to the very important point of why cooperation in this region is not possible, is simply because of the problems that are happening between Turkey and Greece that has been happening for decades and has not been solved yet. I think in addition to supporting the growing cooperation between Israel and Egypt in working together as an energy hub in the region, there must be an international effort as well, especially from international powers like the United States and important European powers, to intervene to solve the conflict or the dispute over maritime zones between Greece and Turkey. Actually, all the efforts that were made in this regard, or the international interventions in this regard, were only enhancing the conflict rather than trying to solve it. So maybe It's now Europe realized that the continuity of this conflict is hurting Europe, hurting the energy supply to Europe, and also need to be resolved. I believe if these two particular issues were resolved, we will see a huge difference in how the energy issue is being handled in the region in the near future.
And I look forward to hearing from you during the moderated discussion that is to follow. Our next speaker, Shahmar Hajiev, is a leading advisor for the Center of Analysis of International Relations, AIR, in Azerbaijan, and he will present the South Caucasus perspective on these issues and the cooperation between Azerbaijan, Europe, US, and others on energy and energy security.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak at this event. We know that nowadays energy security is very important and plays a huge role in international politics, especially the recent crisis in European gas prices and the energy market shows that energy security will play an important role in European politics. Azerbaijan is country rich with natural resources like natural gas and crude oil, and we know that Azerbaijan managed to implement important energy projects such as Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan and the Southern Gas Corridor. I just want to emphasize that a few years ago, many experts thought about the Southern Gas Corridor as a dream, but now Azerbaijan finished the project and Azerbaijani gas, the first Caspian gas, we supply to European Union's energy markets. And Azerbaijan, of course, proved itself as a reliable energy partner for its European allies, also for US, Israel. We know that almost 40% of Israeli oil supplied by Azerbaijan. But let's talk about the natural gas market and the natural gas recent developments in the European energy markets. The tensions between Ukraine and Russia, of course, impacted negatively on the energy market of Europe, and we know that the prices for natural gas is raised so much that European Union consumers suffered from economic point of view, and also there is concern about the disruption of the natural gas to the European gas markets because of the tension between Ukraine and Russia. We know that Russia is the main gas supplier to European Union. It supplies almost 40% of European natural gas. But there is another issue also, the issue with the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. We know that Russia is very interested to send natural gas using this pipeline and of course cut the transit through the Ukraine. But US and European countries, they want Russia to continue the supply of gas through the Ukrainian territory because it's profitable for them, also for Ukraine from the economic. That after 2024, when the transit agreement between these countries will expire, they want to send the gas, but they will, of course, consider the economic, also the profits sending gas through Ukraine. Of course, it will again affect negatively on the gas prices and or gas prices in the European Union. Azerbaijan already started to send natural gas to European allies, and I want to emphasize that Azerbaijani gas goes to Italy, to Greece, to Bulgaria, to Georgia, and this year we plan to export around 19 BCM of natural gas to these countries, 8 BCM to Turkish market, 7 BCM to Italian market, and 4 BCM to Bulgaria, Greece, and Georgia. And the recent crisis showed again that European Union needs to diversify its energy sources and routes. And again, the European Union's officials addressed this concern and asked the allies like the US, Qatar, and Azerbaijan to increase supply of natural gas to European market if there is some disruption of gas, if there is war between Ukraine and Russia will stop the gas. Azerbaijan, of course, is ready to help its European allies to supply natural gas to European market and increase the supply. But of course, the share of the Russian gas is so much that Azerbaijan cannot do that alone. Of course, another important ally for European countries is Qatar. So Qatar also will supply and increase the LNG supply to European energy markets. I want to also emphasize the recent developments between Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan in the region. We know that Turkmenistan is also a very important energy player, and European Union is interested in supplying Turkmenistani gas in the future to European energy markets. So Azerbaijan signed the energy cooperation with Turkmenistan, and Turkmenistan will supply to Azerbaijan 2 BCM of gas per annum, and Azerbaijan will use this gas for domestic consumption. Of course, it's also good for Azerbaijan to use this gas for domestic consumption and increase the gas to European energy markets. I think that the Southern Gas Corridor is very important from both geopolitical point of view, also from economic point of view, because it is the connections, the pipeline which supply the Caspian gas and also in the future Central Asian gas directly to European energy markets. And we know that European Union in the future plan to decrease the level of coal usage in the electric production, so they will prefer the gas use, and that's why we can say that the natural gas will be as a transition fuel towards the Green Deal of the European Union, towards the sustainable development. European Union will use mainly renewables energy and the natural gas. So in this regard, Azerbaijani the gas will play important role in terms of the diversification of sources and routes. And I think that partnership between European Union and Azerbaijan will continue, and in the future we will be able to supply more gas to European energy markets, and Azerbaijan plan to be energy hub in the region, supply not only oil and natural gas, also electricity to the partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shahmar. I look forward to more in-depth discussion on the points that you've made. In the meantime, I'm giving the floor to Adif Baruch. He is a leading entrepreneur and expert on energy from Israel. He's currently in UAE. He is the former chairman of the Israeli Expert and International Cooperation Institute. Adif, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Rina. It's an amazing opportunity to speak to all of you. And I want to take it from a different angle, because we've seen all the analysis of, even when we start with the Abraham Accord vision, with the US leading it, and under the Trump administration, actually connecting the whole Middle East to Europe when it comes to energy supply and creating different hubs. But at the end of the day, I believe that when we look at the numbers, even the collaboration with Egypt and the surplus of gas that we can export, it's really not going to move the needle in a major impact. And what Israel can contribute to this whole discussion, and has done it for many years, because for years we had no natural resources. The only resource that Israel had all the years was our human capital. And due to the petroleum issues and all the embargoes in the past, we always invested heavily in innovative ideas and solutions in the field of alternative energy. And if you look today at the ecosystem of Israel, that we have over 240 different initiatives and companies in the different layers of alternative energy, I believe that we are actually sharing all this research and development and the innovation with the whole region. That's what we're going to start doing with the UAE. That's what we're expecting to do with Morocco, and expedite the process. And as Malcolm mentioned, to set up more farms in solar energy, the storage, because we see this cycle of prices. When the oil prices went completely down, then the alternative energy was more expensive. But if you go through all those cycles, we realize that for the long term, take the sources of wind, solar, and all the other energies that we have developed, it will create every country to become completely, fully sustainable and almost independent from any other different sources. And we should all strive for that, because as we look at, look at the future, just the very near future, 2050, as the world population will grow from 8 billion to over 10 billion, we see the increase of food consumptions is going to be over 70%. Energy and water are going to be major issues, as the energy consumption for production is increasing tremendously. And what we have seen through the COVID-19 impact, with the logistical constraints, the shutdowns, you see how the cost of energy and transportation extremely hiked. And even our cost of living in Israel, energy is becoming a very major part in the cost of living. So the way to actually look at the challenges in the short term, mid term, and long term is to share all of the innovation that we have generated here, to even create additional funds of development, and to be able to deploy the different solution, even if it might be that in the short term, the price per kilowatt or the price per gas is going to be a bit more expensive when it comes to alternative versus the other comparison. But in the long term, it's worthwhile and we should all strive for it. And yes, we'll continue to work with Egypt and to create additional development and finding more source of energy, and even to work with Jordan and to create additional pipelines. But it will take time. It will not solve the immediate issue. And, it's all about collaboration. Abraham Accord peace agreement is giving all of us the opportunity to change the whole region. And the way we can change the whole region is by collaboration in any field, form, and shape. And energy is one of the most important ones.
Thank you so much, Baruch. Thank you so much. I give our next speaker, who is last but not least, and who will bring us towards the moderated portion of the event, the discussion portion, is Amin Lagidi. He's the president and of the International Expert Foreign Trade and Economic Diplomacy. He will discuss Morocco's role in energy issues, in the energy crisis affecting Europe. Aside from the Russia-infused tensions, there is also the issue of gas supply being cut off from Morocco by Algeria, which affects Spain and the south of Europe. The floor is yours.
Well, first of all, thank you, Irina. Thank you for giving me the floor. Thank you also for giving me the opportunity to listen, to be the last one intervening. I like to listen more than I like to speak. For listening is a mark of respect, first of all, and it's part of our Moroccan culture. It's also a mark of interest toward the other partners, and I see that today we are among friends, strategic partners, and allies, with no exception. And third, listening also allows us to build bridges between people and between nations, and that's what I did with great interest. So thank you again for your kind invitation, for you and for Anis. Thanks also for Vice President Holline, for Mrs. Ziada, Mr. Shahman, and Mr. Barak for their valuable inputs. You choose actually a team that is very interesting. It's a combination between energy from one side and between security, and they go together. And it's very important to notice that it's not about competition; it's about cooperation to build the future of the world actually of peace, and also a world of prosperity for all. And this is one of the key priorities of Morocco's foreign policy: one, sovereignty over our territory, our 12 regions, our seas, our resources, but also about playing a key role as a kingdom of pillar of peace and stability, fighting extremism in the region and in the world, And third, of course, of a strategic actually input as a locomotive of prosperity, of wealth creation, job creation in our continent, Africa, in our region, the Mediterranean and the transatlantic, but also in the world. So thanks for the choice of this topic. Since we are in a family actually, and there is this family spirit, I'd like to share with you that less than one hour ago, I was in the Moroccan TV, in Medi One TV, and I had the honor of commenting very important theme this week. It's the royal opening by His Majesty King Mohammed VI and the launch of the construction of the biggest and the first and unique factory of vaccines in all Africa, a factory that aims to become one of the 5 majors in the production of pharmaceutical products, including vaccines for the COVID, but also APIs and other types of pharmaceutical products. And why I'm speaking about this, it's because I followed with great interest less than 4 months ago, the 9th of October exactly, when His Majesty opened the first session of this new parliament, parliament that was democratically elected by the Moroccan women and the men from the 12 regions, from the region of Dakhla in the Moroccan Sahara to the region of Tangier. And there was, in the heart actually of this royal speech, toward the parliamentary representatives of the people, a key message regarding sovereignty. Sovereignty in health, sovereignty in energy, sovereignty in industry, and sovereignty also in food supplies. And today we are discussing actually the second element, which is the energy actually sovereignty. As you may all know, there was actually very happy news coming over the first days of this year. Announcements that were made by British companies doing prospection in the east of Morocco, but also offshore, nearby the legendary city of Laraich, Lixius, that was mentioned in the Greek mythology. Important discoveries. We are waiting the final evaluation, but it seems very promising. So gas seems actually to be knocking its door again in Morocco. But what I would like to mention is that these gas reservoirs are very close right now, just to put you actually on the geography, very close to the city of Tangier, and more precisely to the city of Asila, where there is Tahaddart station, 48 kilometers exactly from the reservoir. Which this station have the capacity already of producing some 400 megawatts. So to equip 1 million houses, about 4 to 5 million people. So this reservoir is also very close to the city of Kenitra, a major city of production together with Tangier of automotives and industries, vertically integrated in Morocco and destined to the local market, but also and mainly to export. So it will come to strengthen the competitiveness of the Moroccan industry. It will come also to strengthen our attractivity actually to foreign investments. But if you mentioned, I think, Irina, about the closing of the pipeline from our eastern neighbors, which had a very low impact, as a matter of fact, at least on our electrical sovereignty, thanks to the clairvoyant leadership that was mentioned by Mr. Honline in his opening remarks. His Majesty, since the beginning of his glorious reign, put the accent on the importance of developing energy sovereignty in the nation, and this was gained and established, and it's already a reality. Whenever we are speaking about electricity, Morocco is already sovereign, independent, and as a matter of fact, we are also exporting. I think we are the only country from Africa exporting in a sustainable manner, 12 months a year, green electricity toward Europe, and it's excellent of our production. And now with the electrical grid arriving to Dakhla in the south of Morocco, we can even expect that we can export this electricity toward actually other African neighboring countries and brother countries such as Mauritania and Senegal and so on. Morocco's green energy is 45% of the established electricity power and the electricity supply. It can be increased even to 55% if we add green management and the smart management of energy, following the commitments that were taken by Morocco and already established in the field after the successful organization of the COP22 in 2016 in Marrakesh. Gas also has, this ability, beside from electricity, to be exported as such, once actually the reserves potential is confirmed, clear, and public. So either as LNG or also through the pipeline, because the part that goes through to Morocco is Moroccan property and is already connected to the southern markets of Europe, mainly to Spain and to Portugal, that are suffering actually right now of lack of supplies and also unreliability of gas supply from some classical suppliers. So the pipeline is less than 11 kilometers from the reservoir of Lixus and can automatically be connected to it once the development is operational and the production started. This brings us actually to the needs that was common subject from all the different speakers. Today, actually, Europe is in need of new suppliers of gas. This goes without saying. There is less investment in the nuclear energy. There is also more demand in the European market itself. There is less production from the classical suppliers for different reasons, not just actually for the reduction of the potential of their reservoirs, but also for the domestic market that is becoming too dependent of gas and that is playing a role of sponge, absorbing all the gas after the production. Gas, yes, can be exported, and there will be definitely, but gas also, aside from electricity and export, has another use that we sometimes forget. It's a key input in the food value chain. Yes, the food value chain, since it's used as key input through transformation to ammoniac and ammonium, added to phosphates, and we all know that Morocco has 70% of their world reserves of phosphates that we share so gladly with the world, supporting actually the world's food security, and we consider it as our commitment, together also with sulfur, nitrates, and the potassium. So more gas, the local gas in Morocco, means food security for Africa and for the world, and more contribution to that. So many opportunities are there on the upstream, but also in the mainstream, in the development of electricity in Morocco, but also for exports from Morocco to Europe and from Morocco to Africa. But let's also focus on some creativity. And I think Mr. Baruch spoke about technology, and AI is big, especially on the energy sector, for the smart production, but also for the storage, but also for the distribution within the countries, but also to the outside, and especially in avoiding waste and managing well actually the peak periods. It's also, whenever we're talking about AI, we're also talking about people and about investment. And as you know, Morocco is the key hub of engineering for mining, energy, and also in infrastructure. Our key leading companies, one of them and the leading one, is a joint venture between the American leader Jeza and the Moroccan mining giant OCP, is already leading in Africa with over 1,200 engineers dedicated mainly to studies. So a lot of things today actually attract attention to Morocco as a hub of investment for Africa, but also as a doorway for African products toward the world. Energy is important for us as an industrial hub, and energy is an important story day to Europe. There is also the important gas pipeline from Nigeria to Morocco, and today it's more than ever a very important subject, and then an actuality subject. Mauritania and Senegal will be producing gas soon, so it makes all sense to be connecting Morocco, Mauritania, Senegal to Europe through the gas pipeline. Nigeria is already pushing it toward Ghana and further toward Ivory Coast. So it's a very viable project, either by going offshore or onshore, to support today actually the strategy of diversification of partnership that Europe is ongoing. Many opportunities are to be thought together, but as part of our philosophy and our Moroccan values, we always think about creating prosperity together, hand in hand. We are never competition to anybody. We come to support global value chains. We come to support our partners. We are known for respecting our words, and we are also known for respecting our alliances. And looking forward to receiving you and meeting you physically once you visit Morocco, to show you the high potential and to discover together new areas of cooperation. Thank you very much.
This was a very worthy and great conclusion to all the interesting remarks we have heard so far. I'd like to invite all the panelists for the moderated discussion to address some of the questions that arose from this great commentary and to address some of the issues that haven't been fully discussed yet. Um, just waiting for. Excellent. So I want to start by addressing a recent study that shows that Europe recently has started shifting with acquiring most of its more LNG than gas through pipelines. And I wanted to ask the panelists how they think that will affect the future for energy cooperation. I know that a number of countries are involved in um, various forms of uh, gas related um, projects. Uh, Shahmar mentioned the southern gas corridor, for instance, which is supported by the United States. Israel has a discussion of a pipeline in development with UAE. Egypt is the leader of the gas forum in the East Mediterranean. So I'd like to hear from all of you what you think is the potential regarding this balance. What you think the future holds in light of these trends in Europe. And yeah, Shahmai, I noticed you.
Yes, you touched upon important issue like the future of LNG to European gas market. We know that European Union right now depends mainly on the pipeline gas, and I think the pipeline gas will play important role in the near future as well because we know that the price of LNG is different in different part of the world. Mainly in Asian market, the price is always high, so the companies prefer going sending LNG resources to Asian markets. But after the recent crisis in the European Union, some companies they send the LNG to European gas market, but I think that it's also like it depends only on the crisis situation because when the prices is up in Asian market, they will prefer the Asian market as well, and that's why European Union understands this situation and therefore they need more pipeline gas and they need the diversification of pipeline sources like the southern gas corridors because we know that southern gas corridors also support interconnectors in the European Union, and I know that, and we know that it's also very important for the European Union to develop interconnectors between the European member states because it also supports the European energy security.
Thank you so much. And I kind of wanted to shift to Adiv and kind of follow up on the issues related to the pipeline. First, to ask about the status of the discussions regarding the Israel and UAE project, and second, despite the fact that US has pulled out from supporting the EastMed pipeline that Israel has been developing with Cyprus and Greece, we are hearing about increasing cooperation with Israel and Europe on energy issue. Could you elaborate a little bit more on this?
Well, I think the first initiative that we've seen is that actually one of the sovereign funds from the UAE had invested capital in Tamar. And that type of cooperation has a great meaning to longer terms. At the same time, we understand that by the time you set up the corridors and the pipe and the gas, think just like the UAE through the leadership saying, how should we act and what kind of post-petroleum strategy should we define when the last drop of oil will leave the port? And I think Europe and all of us, we have to think in the same manner. How can we expedite the process of the different initiative and innovations in the different solutions that we have today to expedite the deployment and to create every single country to be completely independent of the natural sources? And I think those are the most important initiatives. And we can actually, hand by hand, work together to expedite the process. Because this will create what we mentioned before, the job security, to create more jobs to the future generations. It will give us an opportunity to see a much safer and cleaner world. Because remember that every single physical drillings or pipes that we see, there's also the security issue and the terrorism issue in order to prevent those pipes. When you create a country that is self-sustained with alternative energy, you're eliminating most of those issues. And the innovation, when it comes to, as my colleague from Morocco mentioned, you look at the AI, the optimization process, the way to store the different alternative energy at a much lower cost, to be able to ship it and to create, if you are a green country, like take an example, Morocco, mentioned 45% of the energy is now generated from alternative energy. Why can't it grow up to 65 and 70 and 80 and replicate it in many other countries? It can be done. And we can all do it together in a much faster way. And sometimes there are different interests and political interests, and we understand that. But in the long term, those should be the initiatives.
My question to Amin, following up on this, do you see Morocco shifting more to the use of LNG? And furthermore, could you comment also on Morocco's cooperation with Israel and Morocco's perspective on that?
All right, excellent question. It has three parts. So first, the LNG part. Right now, we are already actually importer of gas. Until actually the current reserves are starting to be produced and also to grant us actually a sufficiency which we expect over to have clear visibility in the next actually days. Import of LNG is important. As a matter of fact, we are already discussing right now the deployment of new ports, but also platforms of LNG for the imports. But there is already the gas pipeline, as I mentioned before, that is linking Morocco to Europe, and that can serve also as a sourcing of gas, not just actually from Morocco, but from all of Africa, starting from Nigeria and over 13 countries. But to get back to your early question, because this is the best introduction to your answer, you asked our Azari friend, beautiful country by the way, about is the world shifting actually from pipelines to LNG? I think actually Europe and the world in general today needs to find a balance between reliability of supplies, also freedom, because nobody wants to have Damocles spear on their heads all the time, and also some kind of diversity, and LNG allows actually diversity of supply. We saw a drastic actually and important increase of the exports from the US gas, mainly coming from shale gas to UK and also to European LNG ports, and including actually the south of Europe, from Qatar as well. And you mentioned that, so that's in your brilliant introduction. There is also a strategic shift, because the world today that haven't decided yet on going on long-term post-pandemic, on going on long-term contracts or more medium and short-term. And LNG offers this kind actually of opportunities and agility over the supply chains to seize the opportunities, especially in the drop of prices whenever they come. A third point that is very important, I think that this is our dear Mr. Baruch that addressed it, and thank you actually for the kind of appreciation of my country that is also yours, Morocco. So the last point, it's about why don't we think differently? Europe today wants to commit to more green world, to more sustainable world, and we all actually commit to that. But why should we always think about the export of gas while we can think about the export of electricity? And our countries have the ability to produce locally electricity and to export it to Europe, either from gas, but also from renewable energy. Middle East and Africa were represented in this panel, and we have actually huge reserves of huge potential actually in solar. Morocco holds the biggest solar farm in the world. Israel is big on that, and cooperation can only actually profit the two nations, the two countries. Again, in the production, also in the storage, and storage storage of electricity is very important today. AI for that, but also for the distribution in the future. So new models need to be thought today. The pandemic didn't just actually decrystallize the world as we know it from production point of view. It decrystallized the mind how we think. And our youth today are thinking differently, and their consumption is different from the past. Let's use that to put actually on the table new ideas and new projects. I mentioned again the Royal project of the pipeline from Nigeria to Morocco. It's very needed today. The reinforcing the capacity of export of electricity from Africa and the Middle East directly to Europe is very needed today because the need is there, and cooperation between our nations can only profit to that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I kind of wanted to get back to Dalia, but I don't see her online. Dalia? Let me just check in with her. We lost her.
You upset her by letting her intervene at the end.
No, I have a good question for her, actually. And I love her for the answer. Dalia, I wanted to ask you about the gas forum. Now, with the East Med pipeline essentially dead in the water, Egypt nevertheless continues its leadership on the issue of gas with a number of different countries. Could you tell us about the latest developments in gas forum cooperation and what direction do you see it taking after now that the EastMed pipeline is not really a viable project?
Sure. So actually, the East Med Gas Forum is, or the East Med Gas Organization now, is a very important organization in terms with its role in leading the security and the trade affairs related to energy in this troubled region of the Eastern Mediterranean, especially that we have seen in the past few years as actually the new Middle East is being formed, and the weight of leading the region is gradually moving towards the Gulf countries, especially Saudi Arabia. This created an interest in Gulf countries to find better ways to cooperate with or to engage with the Eastern Mediterranean countries, especially on issues related to gas, electricity, and energy in general. This actually all what we have seen, and of course all what my colleagues here has mentioned about what's happening in North Africa and the growing power of Morocco as a hub for exporting energy to Western Africa and Southern Europe, all this together makes it a necessity that there must be some kind of an organization that should not exclude anyone between two brackets in the region that can also manage, and its main role be managing this new growing affair. I think the East Med Forum, or the East Med Organization, which is its new title now, is very much qualified to play this role. Except inside the forum or the organization, we hear from time to time some voices that insist on enhancing conflicts rather than encouraging resolutions. For example, we have seen when the UAE, United Arab Emirates, asked, this was about, I think, at the beginning, mid-2020, when the United Arab Emirates asked to be an observer in the forum, Palestine objected. Like the Palestinian representatives refused to.
See, we need source of alternative energy.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry for that. I don't know why it keeps cutting. But what I wanted to say is that there must be someone or some organization to play the role of coordinating all this security mess and conflicts and historical disputes in this region, so the flow of the gas and the energy and other also resources of energy, not only gas, keep going in the region, from the region to Europe, and also the countries of the region benefit from. So basically, this is what's happening right now in the East Med Forum. But again, this will bring us to the issue of the importance of including other players in the region, like Turkey, for example, which is actually Egypt. Even when it was when the dispute was very heated between Egypt and Turkey, Egypt was and Egypt made this agreement with Cyprus and Greece to use to cooperate on this East Med Forum and the East Med pipeline. Egypt was very careful not to exclude Turkey in one way or another, and respected its boundaries. So I think it's time for Turkey to take the initiative also to ask to be part of the East Med Forum. Now the time is right for this, and I think as we are talking about the importance of cooperation, as my colleagues has already mentioned, it's important to include everybody and not to exclude anyone from the future of the energy and security in the region.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I personally believe that this would be a very constructive way of addressing many economic and also even political issues. And it also brought to mind what you said about managing the daily flow to a diplomatic format that Azerbaijan is actually part of, the 3+3 format of dialogue, which does not attempt to solve all the big issues between member states, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, which is not currently actively participating, Russia, Iran, and Turkey, but does allow them to address daily and minor issues like flow of trade and things of that nature that otherwise would be causing additional problems on top of the geopolitical concerns. And I was wondering whether that is something that could be a part of a discussion, whether that format could work to resolve some of the issues that you just mentioned. But moving on, though, to a different point, and that's the issue of renewables and renewable energy. We have seen that not all forms of renewable energy are created equal, and furthermore, they don't. One size fit all model of renewable energy does not necessarily work in all contexts. Morocco has a huge solar project, but that would not necessarily work in northern European countries where the level of solar exposure is significantly lower. We've seen Germany struggle with wind energy and the expenses of maintaining wind turbines, and of course there's always the issue of clean nuclear energy. Germany closed down its nuclear power plants after the Fukushima disaster in Japan, but now there's a question of whether that was a wise decision or not, and whether there is a potential for international cooperation on developing clean forms of nuclear energy. And I'd love to hear from the panels about the opinions of the future of renewables. What could work in the context of international cooperation, and how do you see it? And I'll actually start with Amin this time.
Sure, with pleasure. If we're talking about renewable, allow me to share with you a little bit of the background of Morocco. In the late 60s and the beginning of the 70s, we started our renewable energy project of the past century. Thanks to His Majesty King Hassan II's initiative, it's granted not just actually the roots of electrical sovereignty for the country, but also an important reservoir of water in a region where water and water stress can be sources of problems, and if well managed, can be sources of opportunities. But with the glorious reign of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, it's another dimension. I'm very proud as a Moroccan, actually, whenever I'm abroad in international conferences from the US to Japan, since they are the two that you mentioned. And people actually put Morocco as a pilot in the region and in the continent in terms of green energy as percentage, but also as creativity. We have the largest solar plant in the world, which is in the east of the country, in the region of Ouarzazate. While we are speaking right now, our engineers and workers are finalizing new water dams and water barrages in the south, in the Moroccan Sahara, in the east, in the center. While we are speaking, there is a new wind farm nearby Tantan in the south of Morocco, again, in the Moroccan Sahara, developed together hand in hand with our American friends. So wind, solar, also actually water energy, but also hydrogen soon. And most importantly, we have developed also this ability to have actually green management while designing and engineering our buildings. And people forget about that. Engineering, having green energy, it also includes having green buildings, green factories, green infrastructures that consume only the needed energy and avoid waste. We have also adapted and modernized our law in order to allow the private sector to produce for their needs, but also to inject their excedentary production into the local grids. So bright days ahead for the green energy sector in Morocco. And as I mentioned, we keep an ambitious but also humble nation. We like actually to develop all the time. We are open actually for partnerships with the world, and I'm sure with our Israeli and American friends we can develop a lot in terms of education, again, in terms of research and development, in terms of energy storage, but also in terms of smart distribution. There is huge opportunities in producing locally for green energy. Either actually, and I can also just as an example mention that in the north of Morocco, in the port of Tangier, the biggest port in the Mediterranean, today the adjacent actually industrial zone includes one of the biggest wind farms, wind blades factories in the world. So we are vertically integrated. We don't just actually produce the green energy, we also produce the upstream, which is the machinery needed for the production, but also for the transportation. But together we can actually combine these efforts and develop what I like to call co-industrialization. Each country brings its expertise. Those that have the money bring the money. Those that have the brains share their expertise and their knowledge, and those that have actually the industry develop, and we all get more prosperous and more green. Thank you. Irina?
Thank you so much. And actually, I wanted to return to Dalia because Egypt has also recently announced initiatives related to renewable energy, and I wanted to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, actually, Egypt or the general policy in Egypt now is to make use of renewable energy. And actually, 1 month ago, the president started a new station for producing solar energy in Aswan. It's a city in the south of Egypt, in case you don't know, which is very, very sunny. And this is expected to be the biggest hub in the whole Africa and Middle East region to produce solar energy within the next 5 years. The project has already started, and the construction of the project is expected to end by 2025, and then it will start operation. This, of course, will enhance Egypt's potential of being a hub for exporting power and for exporting energy in the form of electricity power and solar power, and also gas and oil to other neighbors, either in Africa, especially in Eastern Africa and the Middle East region. Actually, recently we have seen important investors in the oil sector from the Middle East, such as Qatar, for example, coming to invest in Egypt's energy sector. I think in November, it was announced that Qatar purchased huge shares in the plants of oil exploration in the Red Sea that are run by private companies and also the Egyptian government. This is very interesting because it shows how important Egypt is growing as a hub for energy in the region. Also, Egypt has surplus of electricity that exceeds 2,500 megawatts. And even actually in conflict between Egypt and Ethiopia over the Nile River issue, Egypt even offered to export or help Ethiopia get electricity from this surplus by offering it, donating it, like, helping with solving the electricity crisis in Ethiopia, which actually is an essential part of this whole conflict over the Nile River and the Grand Ethiopian Dam, by providing them with this electricity surplus. So I think all these together are very important, but still, speaking about gas, we have seen statements from important investors in this sector, like, for example, ExxonMobil officials, and so saying that the region and the world will continue to need gas for at least until 2050, which is enough time for the countries that are producing gas right now in the Eastern Mediterranean to invest and put all their resources and interests in making best use of these coming 20 years or 30 years until the world start to depend on other renewable energy resources.
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to move on to Adif, who can discuss Israel's initiatives on renewable energy. I know that Israel has led on a number of startups and companies related to this field, but also on the government level has emphasized the renewable energy in the past year. Can you talk about what you see about Israel's cooperation with on the international level on this issue?
Well, first and foremost, it's not only in the last year. I mean, Israel has initiated many programs, and we had both local capital and foreign direct investments in the field of alternative energy. And the level of innovation that we have within the ecosystem of the universities, the industries, due to one single fact that led Israel throughout the years, as I mentioned at the beginning, that we had no natural resources. And to create a country that will be completely independent, as we had issues in the past, made it even more implicable. And we've put a lot of emphasis in becoming the most innovative hub in the world when it comes to alternative energy. And that is part of the innovation that if we look now at the region, and we're now calling from the private sector to the public sector, to our leader, saying our generation is a generation of collaboration, cooperation, and co-creation. Co-creation is very important to really implement it within the younger generation. That will give us the strength. Because if some countries have the land, and some countries have the innovation, and some countries have surplus of water. So think of now how you can change the world. Instead of using the pipes of liquid gas, use those pipes to transfer water from Northern Europe and Europe that can transfer the water to those countries who are suffering. And look at what Egypt is facing in the future when it comes to water water shortage, and so forth, but it can be a hub of energy. If we will really zoom out, take it to a 40,000 level, look at the whole region, how we can create an equilibrium of assets between the countries to make it a much better environment and even a better world, a cleaner world and a safer world to all of us. And I can take you step by step. I don't think we have the time to do it in every single layer of the ecosystem of alternative energy, from solars and panel and robots and AI, moving to the wind, moving to the storage, moving to hydro energy. You know what? Take it to the level of desalination of water. How much energy you need to desalinate water? And Israel has shortage of water. I think we're the only country in the world today that nearly 88% of our water consumption, both for agriculture and human consumption, 88% of the water is coming from recycling water or desalination. And our neighboring countries, we can work together to create hubs of water that will create hubs of energy that will create a safe zone to all of us.
Excellent. Thank you for your insights. Now turning to Shahmar, I wanted to hear you discuss recently, in the past year, a number of EU representatives focused on the growing relations between Azerbaijan and the European Union, and in particular underscoring potential cooperation on renewables. Also, Azerbaijan has a strong relationship with Israel, and I wanted to hear what projects or a potential for cooperation with Israel and with the EU as Baku has in mind.
This is also very important for Azerbaijan because our country has great potential for renewables energy sources, and recently we signed very important contract with Aqua Power company of the Saudi Arabia, and they will build the biggest wind farm in Azerbaijan. And it's very important because this wind farm will be built by them, and we will use the foreign investment. And Azerbaijan also is interested to develop sustainable energy. And I want to emphasize that after the liberation of Karabakh, the government plans to create green zones in those regions because those regions have great potential to develop hydropower, solar power, and therefore we have plans to develop green energy zones and use these energy sources to supply our smart villages and smart cities in Karabakh region of Azerbaijan. And the plan of the government is to reach 30% by 2030 in total installed capacity of renewable energy sources in the country. And I think it's very important for the future sustainable development for Azerbaijan, as well as we know that Europe also is switching to renewable energy sources. But of course, we can't say that in short term, Europe and Azerbaijan, we can all just develop the renewable energy sources, because it's impossible to rely on one energy source to secure its energy security. And that's why I think that natural gas will play important role in the near future, as I mentioned earlier. But of course, renewable energy is the future of the countries, and I think Azerbaijan and other European countries will support these projects. Of course, we have very good also cooperation with Israel in all spheres, political, military, energy, and I think we will continue our successful cooperation. Also, Israeli company will take part in reconstruction in energy space in Karabakh region as well.
That's fascinating, and I certainly look forward to hearing much more about that. Now, my last question before I let all the panelists give their any concluding remarks that they may wish is about the future of cooperation with the United States in the field of energy and energy security. We have seen the policies of U.S. administrations vary quite widely from one president to another. I wanted to discuss both the long term and the short term prospects for cooperation in light of these realities, in light of political polarization and very distinct economic views by different parties and different presidents. What, if anything, can be done in light of the current administration's negative view on pipelines, but more of a emphasis on renewable energy? Do you see there is a potential to grow that cooperation on that level, given the kind of imbalanced approach to these types of energies? And in the long term, how do you see managing a potential vacillation in energy policies by U.S. administrations to avoid um, having U.S. Not to avoid either dependencies that are not helpful to any of the actors, and to increase the potential for smooth cooperation, no matter what policies are being implemented by the U.S. And I'll start with Adib here.
Okay, so I have a complete different view to the whole region. And also, when I acted as the chairman of the Israeli Expert Institute, and I come from, coming from the private sector and being an entrepreneur all my life, we always said to the government, do us a favor, just don't interfere. And at the end of the day, I think today, if you look at the whole region, even in Egypt and in Morocco, and the involvement of the private sector to take global initiatives for a much better world, that's where we should be. And we shouldn't really depend on any administration, because those long-term planning are way beyond an administration and chain of administration. It should be sustainable and it should have continuity. And we cannot allow ourselves, any of the countries, to depend that we'll go through one policy and then an administration changes the whole policy 180 degrees. It doesn't make any sense for the long-term planning. And we can, if we'll decide, and we can do it, if we'll decide that cooperation is important and it's critical for the future growth of our countries, those cooperation will be, I would say, the compass for the private sector. And the private sectors, once they take the initiatives, it's way and above any administration or any other government. And if you look at today, the source of capital that is available in the market to initiate long-term plans, the capital is there. And therefore, we have to look now at the regulation. Will the regulation of every country will interfere in the global market? And we have to work on that as well. So if you combine now the level of education, share education, understanding that energy can be a critical source of future wars if we don't manage it properly. And same with the shortage of water. And if we understand that, we can move forward with long-term planning and get the private sector to be much more involved.
I'm all in favor of private sector involvement, because governments have their issues. They mean well, but it's easier to operate as a private actor to make progress faster. Now to Dalia, what are your thoughts on the subject?
Actually, I think the two main concerns here are number one, security issues, and number two, governance systems. Because actually, most of those who are controlling, or most of the countries that are controlling energy in our world, are either facing security troubles or having poor systems of governance. And these two main issues needs to be resolved, so we can guarantee the smoother way of leading the whole issue. For example, we have seen recently how the Houthi militia started to again bring trouble in Aden, in the south of the Red Sea, and affecting the trade movement, and thus affecting most of, including of course most of the energy exports and so on. Also, we are seeing conflicts in Central Asia, and also recent turmoil in this important region, which actually has a lot of energy resources. And of course, we have all the problems of governance issues in the main countries that are responsible for leading the energy of the world, or who have control over the energy, the most important energy and the largest and the most important energy resources in the world. So I think the priority should be given to solving these two issues: security and improving systems of governance in these countries will make the whole difference in the future.
Thank you so much. Now, Amin.
With pleasure. Thank you again for your invitation. I learned a lot today, and I enjoyed actually the discussion, really. Irina, I speak 7 languages, but in international relations, the language that is the strongest is the language of common interest. Let's understand that, you know. And you spoke about the relations with the United States of America. Our relations as Kingdom of Morocco are very strong, as a matter of fact. And as you know, we were the first country to recognize the United States. And these relations have always remained strong, diverse, and also from different levels: political, economical, cultural, etc. And just last year, 2021, on the beginning of the year, the official document of the recognition of the Moroccan sovereignty over our Moroccan Sahara have been distributed by the official delegation of the United States to all the members of the Security Council, and also to all the members of the General Assembly. So we are very happy about our relations with the United States. In the same time, and this is where I join again my friend Baruch. Let's also talk as private sector. I have also the pleasure of wearing this hat. I'm president of the Business Council, Moroccan Foreign Affairs and Foreign Relations Business Council, and Foreign Exports, and there is a lot to be done. But since we only have 1 minute, I would like to focus on just one project, the project of the port of Dakhla. Why this project? One, because it's very dear to my heart. I was in Lyon when His Majesty in 2015, 6th of November 2015, launched the new model of development of the South. The entire population was happy. There was actually, it was like a big wedding in the streets. And this model today, 2022, is already a reality. Many desalination centers have been done. I was listening to what you were saying. In the South, in the Sahara, when you are in Dakhla, when you are in Lyon, when you are in Mahbas, when you are in Gargaras, you can drink the water from the tap, you can shower with no restrictions, you can go to the swimming pool, and you don't feel that you are in the middle of the desert, a region where there is no water, thanks to desalination centers. And next to this desalination center, there was always green, and I insist on that, green power plants. So green power plants developing actually water. But why I'm speaking about the port of Dakhla, this port is a common point between the interests of the United States of America and Morocco. The United States today look for creation of jobs, the looks for the creation of value, and that goes together with the creation of more competitiveness of their value chain, because we need to distinguish always between 2 types of jobs, or 3 even. One, mass jobs that are created in mass, in big quantity, and they are needed for different reasons, for peaceful reasons, but also for political reasons and for macroeconomic reasons. There is second, the jobs with the high value added that have high salaries, but also create high value. And third, the auto entrepreneur jobs. I like to distinguish between the 3 because the mindset is very different to create the 3. But those 3 are linked to more competitiveness in the American value chain, and more competitiveness in the value chain of the United States, but also more sustainability, green value chains. And Dakhla can contribute to that because it's today a gateway, not just actually of the world toward Africa, where American products can be distributed through Dakhla. They can be assembled, they can be packaged, even adapted to the African needs, but we can also do the sourcing and this is very important, of all raw material, minerals, and products that are coming from the West, the Center, and even the Austral Africa, centralize them in Dakhla, manufacture them, reproduce them, and even with creation of value in our African brother and sister countries, and then export them to the United States and to other partners in the world, sending a product of good quality, but also rare products that today are very hard to find in sustainable, reliable manner that profit actually to the American value chains, contribution to more value creation, and then to more jobs. Port of Dakhla, if we focus on it, it's green energy, because energy is always needed to produce industry, but it's also huge opportunities for distribution to this big market that is Africa, but also to the sourcing for this big market. And this can be a totem of this beautiful cooperation that we have with our friends in the United States.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm glad to have something to be optimistic about, for sure. And Shahmar, the word is to you.
Yes, this is a very interesting question. Actually, as my colleague mentioned, the U.S. position towards to some regions depends on the position of the administration in Washington. So their position may change from time to time, but mainly U.S. position towards to our region was connected to energy. We know that U.S. Was always interested in energy cooperation with regional countries in South Caucasus, in Central Asia, to send the Caspian energies and Central Asian energy resources to global energy markets. And US supported mainly Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline, also the gas projects in the region, and we know that they support also the future possible, let's say, Trans-Caspian and gas pipeline. But they lack always the exact position towards the region, like the security issues. We know that for instance, in South Caucasus, we always had the problem, Armenian-Azerbaijan problem, the Georgian-Russian problem. And that's why I think they lack that position towards our region, because US, for instance, has the platform of cooperation with Central Asian countries, like the Central Asia 5+1, all of Central Asian countries plus the United States. But they didn't have, and they doesn't have right now, such platform concerning the South Caucasus. And I think now we have the very good time, because we solved the problem mainly with Armenia, and now we are interested in regional cooperation, in regional economic integration. And that's why I think US can cooperate with South Caucasus countries, with Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, to create such, for instance, platform like the South Caucasus countries plus the United States. And I think it will be very good for the future prosperity of the region, for the security and for cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if before wrapping up, I'll give the panelists an opportunity to make any brief concluding comments, and I'll start with in reverse order with Amin.
Such a big honor. Thank you very much. Well, I will not make a closing remarks. I will make at the opposite, an opening remarks, because we want cooperation to ever last, and we want it to be prosperous. So this is not an ending. This is an opening for cooperation, for talking. I think there was a great synergy between all of our discussions. Common respect to the sovereignty of each of our country, and I appreciate the patriotism that was very clear in the speech of each of our of the speakers, and their defense of the interest of their nations. This is very important. Our countries need us, but in the same time, there is a lot actually of common points, either on the present but also on the future. And we cannot tackle actually new problems with tools of the past. We need to develop also what I call sovereignty of thinking. We need to think differently and need to approach things differently. And one last point, let's remember that perception is very important. So let's work together on developing a positive perception of each of our countries inside, regarding the other countries on the outside, so that cooperation comes together. And instead of talking a lot, let's focus on some key points, some key projects that can become reality on the field, teach people how to work together, and can be justification to go toward the future.
Excellent. Thank you. Couldn't agree more. And Agif?
Well, as I mentioned, and I'm completely in line and sync with my colleague from Morocco. And yes, we have to think completely different out of the box. And the only way to think completely out of the box is to look at the evolution that the communication world went through. Okay, we had the landline telephone lines, and in order to get a phone, you had to wait sometime in different countries 2 to 3 years to get a phone at home and to communicate. And all of a sudden, we live in a world that is completely wireless. You can connect anywhere, and some of the countries went through a quantum leap to have access to the information and then to have access to data, which enabled many countries, deprived countries, to even have a better education. We will have to go and visualize that we're going through the same evolution in the energy market. Just think of the world, which is completely wireless power. Just like you have wireless Wi Fi data everywhere through satellites, we'll be there in the very near future to be in a world who's going to be completely wireless power. And that will change completely, not only the region, but the world. And we have to look at it and think differently how to manage the energy market and move faster to much more cleaner, renewable energy that no matter where you can generate it, the rest of the world will have access to it.
Shahmar?
Thank you again for this great opportunity, and thanks for all speakers. I enjoyed really all presentations. It was very interesting. And I think that our countries have great opportunity also for cooperation. As I mentioned, we have very good friendship and we are very close with Israel. We cooperate in many areas. And just to add some facts that, of course, we have to think about the future sustainability. And that's why I think that COVID-19 changed some opinion of all countries, because we have to think differently right now, not only focus on energy, on traditional energy sources, but also think about the future, about the green energy, because it's the future. And if we want to secure our future energy security, we have to think about that issue. And I think many countries started to think about this important thing, both natural resource rich countries and also other countries. And like Azerbaijan, we are planning to be not only like the hub for exporting natural gas and crude oil, but also electricity, because we are going to develop our renewable energy sources as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Dalia, you're also now last, but definitely not least. There, no least. We have everyone here brought amazing, tremendous value to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Irina. I really enjoyed the discussion, and it actually brought me a lot of optimism to my heart, which I would like to close with. I think the region is of the Middle East, the three important regions of the Middle East, Eastern Mediterranean, and also Central Asia. The countries in these three regions are growing more interdependent on each other, while actually less dependent on foreign or Western powers as they were in the past, which is some important reason to make us optimistic about the future. All what we need to do is to cooperate on managing the abundance of resources that we have, and keep the spirit of the Abraham Accord is going for better future outcomes. Hopefully that will help us get over all the troubles we are facing right now. So thank you again, and thank you for everyone. I really enjoyed being with you.
Thank you so much, and hopefully this is only the first of many such panels with bringing together great speakers such as yourselves. And to address Dalia's note about the continuing the spirit of Abraham Accords of cooperation over forward-looking future, UIMBC will actually be hosting a live summit, as Malcolm Coleman mentioned in his opening remarks, in Morocco once the borders are fully open and all the restrictions are lifted. And we'd like in advance to thank His Majesty King Mohammed VI and Her Highness Lala Jamela, the ambassador, Morocco's ambassador to the United States, for their support for this project, which will focus on energy security. and which will bring together leaders, thinkers from the countries cooperating on these issues to look forward to solutions, forms of cooperation, and to bring to light these ideas that were mentioned by our distinguished panelists today. Thank you so much to everyone. It was a pleasure. Your remarks were informative, provocative, and very optimistic and constructive. And we look forward to further cooperation with you on having them implemented in real life. And stay tuned for other UIMBC events coming up very soon. With you today was the Vice President of UIMBC, Rina Zuckerman. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity.